Where'd you go?
I
Hello?
didn't go anywhere, man.
Nope.
I was just hitting record. It was a test, and you failed. We got James. I got Becky. Becky Dwyer. I've been kind of slacking on the podcasting, and so I've been trying to make sure I get some podcasts done. I put out a quick post that says, "Hey, I need some ideas." And Becky, James is always game to bullshit with me. So we had already talked about doing a podcast about something. We just didn't know what to talk about yet. And Becky sent a message, and Becky, what was your? And somebody else on my post had mentioned this about social media, and you had messaged me about social media. And since I know that you're a frequent podcaster, you're like a podcast celebrity, Becky. Even on our podcast, I think. I was like, "Hey, would you do one? I haven't done a podcast with you yet, or at least I don't think have I."
No, not yet. I'm just still surprised somebody other than Cleve wants to listen to me ramble on. He probably doesn't want really to either, but he has to.
You had me nervous there for a minute. I was like, "Shit, did I really?" And I already forgot. I'm like, "Oh man, I'm not good at this."
Nope, you're all good.
But anyways, so we want to talk about like social media, and that's a touchy one for me. More because I'm pretty more honest than I probably should be sometimes on motivations. And let me fix the camera here. I think social media is kind of detrimental to society in general. You know what I mean? Like, I think as a general rule, not just hunting. So we're going to try and focus on the hunting side and maybe touch into some of that. But even back in the big game houndsman days before Facebook, I remember thinking, man, like, I remember saying something to the effect of, sharing the pictures and stuff like that was more about the ego. And I had a couple guys get on me. This is way before Facebook. Like, I didn't even know how smart I was back then. Now I still think that, but I'm just a little more careful to say it out loud. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm gonna be a little nicer, but it's touchy because I'm gonna catch some flack from people who are like, "Oh, I share photos for X, Y, Z," and they're gonna take offense to the fact that I say it's really about ego a lot of times. And when I say it's about ego, I include myself in that. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be upfront and clear that even when I post, a lot of times it's about my ego. And sometimes I'm good at catching that. Sometimes I'm not good at catching that. And so I don't want people thinking that I'm like preaching some from pulpit that I'm better than thou, or that I think anybody that shares a picture on social media is just an egotistical maniac. I want to be clear that that's not what I'm saying, but it is kind of what I'm saying on a small scale.
Yeah, and I think you do have a good point there.
Yeah.
It pretty much is. I mean,
yeah, we got a little bit of an echo going here, or a delay, I think, which we're gonna have to fix. So, James, go ahead. I want to start with you, and I'm gonna have to drive it a little bit more so we don't walk on each other. But you actually got off of social media, and I think Becky, you kind of I watched. I just did some homework and checked on your social media too, and you're fairly I don't say calculated on your social media. James, I know you're on Instagram. You're not on Facebook half the time. I'll post something on Facebook and you don't even know that it's there. But
No, yeah, I don't think I've had Facebook since like 2018 or something like that. It's been quite a little while. And I guess I even go through stages of getting rid of my Instagram every once in a while, and especially like this time of year, when I'm guiding in North Idaho and consistently in places where I don't have very good cell phone service. A lot of times I'll just get rid of it, and that way if someone's trying to get a hold of me, they could text me if they want to get a hold of me, and if they don't have my phone number, then it's probably not that important.
yeah. Becky, what's your theory on your social media?
Yeah, I Facebook aggravates me. Pretty much the only reason I'm on Facebook is for the outfitting page. And there's a couple kind of cool cowboys I follow. Their outfitters that are not on Instagram, and I really like reading their stories. But other than that, Facebook could take a hike. I pretty much use it anyways as just more or less like a, I don't know, I guess back in the day, folks would print out pictures and put them in an album, and I just store them online, I suppose. But I think it's definitely a catch-22. I guess it's about like anything. There's good things and bad things, but and you were talking about the ego trips and all that, and a lot of times it's 100% what it is. But it, I don't think very many people are self-aware enough to realize that's what it is. And if they are self-aware enough, they're not going to come right out and say it like that. That's half the battle, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think, but I think it goes a little deeper than that. Sometimes I think, I mean, I think in society, it's. I think social media is bringing out something society wise, an innate need for us to, you know, share and have influence and stuff like that. And so, um, I don't want to just chalk it up to be like, oh yeah, it's just about egos or whatever like that. I mean, I think that's what it is on a micro scale, but I think it's actually a little bit deeper than just the word egos is a really negative term. You know what I mean? Like that kind of comes across really, really negative, and it doesn't have to be. Like having an ego is a healthy part of being a man or probably a woman too. You know what I mean? Like you're a I can imagine you're in a man's world and some of the things you do. And I just know that a lot of women in your kind of place, with horses, and every cowgirl I know's got a pretty good ego chip. You know what I mean? Like they have to, right, to ride and do things with the boys. And sometimes to a detriment, you know what I mean? Like, there's plenty of gals that are in the hound world and then the dog world or the horse world. And they, in my opinion, they carry too much ego. You know what I mean? They same way. And I think it's the same with guys or stuff like that. So, but, but on the other realm, it gives you motivation to do things that some city girls not doing either too. So I think it's, I don't necessarily want to just chalk up ego is a purely negative thing. I, but I think it's a motivation that if people could take away the negative response to saying that because you posted a picture, it's about ego, just taking a second and going, okay, I'm not trying to call you names. I'm just trying to get somebody to be more deeper thinking and self reflect on how that makes you feel. You know what I mean? When I post a picture, um, my son shooting an elk this year, I thought, man, should I post a picture of this? And number one, I was like, well, that's my son's story to tell. And number two, why would I post a picture? Because I want somebody to like it and stuff. And yes, I do. I want to post a picture and I want to get that accolades and be like, oh, wow, cool, buddy. Yeah, right on. You're so cool. You go hunting and this and that. And I just kind of sit back and go, once in a while I need to do that, you know, but, but I've been really cautious to try to sit back and go, let me think about it some more. And then often if I hold back and I hold back, it gets too late. And then I'm like, well, now I'm just posting old shit. And there's plenty of people that do that too, but I'm not going to do that. Post some stuff from last year. So, um, you
Yeah, I
know,
think I think you have to judge the content of the post and the
Yeah,
intention behind it more than anything, and what was the person's desired reaction. I mean, there's only, well, I won't go there, but yeah, uh, you can generally tell the intent behind a post.
so go ahead.
Pretty,
I'm used to making people mad. So
I
go
mean,
ahead. I want to go over
I'd
there.
rather I'd rather see a lot of hound and mule posts rather than the same 15 selfies a day from the same chick who's proclaiming to the world her self worth to everyone except herself. Uh, or it's just the intention behind it. You can generally read pretty well, I think, and go based off that. Yeah, I mean, of course, you want to post stuff for your kids or good days, and I think another thing people have to be careful of too. I'm gonna digress on that. I think a lot of times social media has gotten to be more of a replacement for physical. socialization. Um, so it does seem maybe a little more, I don't want to say intense than it should be, but I think it's kind of a replacement for physical association. Um, and I think there can be good things and bad things brought from it.
Yeah, and that's like I think you kind of touched on a point because James, if there's one person, and I don't have a lot of friends. I got a lot of people I know and whatever, but I know James. Like I don't know how many text threads you got on your phone. I know how many unread messages. Everybody talks about my unread messages, but if I could scroll through James's text messages, I'm guessing there's like pages of different people because he's always like, "Oh, I was texting this person, I was texting that person, I was texting." He's always communicating really broadly through text or messaging or Instagram or whatever it is. But um, I think you're kind of onto that. Like I just, James, I'm gonna let you take it over, but you have a lot of communication with a lot of different people. And what have you ever thought about that?
Um, yeah, I mean, in a sense, I think that, you know, there is some good that can come out of social media. Just with, well, say, use the Colorado thing, for example, right now. Um, the United Houndsmen of Colorado are putting up a fight to try to keep line hunting in their state. And I think that without social media, um, you probably wouldn't have nearly as much of a chance at winning that battle. But with social media, you're able to reach just such a larger audience that, I think it can be good or bad.
Yeah.
If you're representing something in a positive way and you're getting word out there, then, it's great. But it seems like it takes, one bad post or one bad apple to kind of snowball and ruin that entire thing.
So let's dive into that. Like, so I agree. There are some really good benefits out of social media. And me personally, I, um, I have different motivations for social media. Number one, I own W Hunt Spy. So obviously I use social media to my advantage for W, right? An inner motivation that I've never really said outwardly, but my personal social media, I try, and I'm going to be really vulnerable here, but I try to keep it big enough that if W fails, maybe I could not have to go find a job. You know what I mean? Maybe I can pull something out of my hat that if W walks away, then I'm like, well, I don't have to start from scratch. So, um, and that's just me being really flat honest with people. Like, hey, I really have gone my early, um, and I can only speak on myself, but my early motivation was I didn't want more than 200 friends on Facebook. And I would have people friend request me, and I was feeling bad because my thing was if I didn't know you in person, I didn't want to be Facebook friends with you. And I couldn't keep um, that mentality, right? I I lost where I lost control of that messaging of, I think I was hurting feelings and not, I mean, whatever. And I was like, okay, so at some point, I don't know when, this is probably 4 or 5, 6 years ago, I had changed my strategy that was like, well, if you friend request me and I can find a dog or something in there or whatever, I just accepted the friend request. I was like, yeah, whatever. And with that wider audience, I actually closed down. I was less open on Facebook because I got more people that I don't trust or whatever. And I have more deeper, I have good connections with people too, but I just know that there are people that I'm like, yeah, I don't know all these 2,000 people or 2,200 people, however many there are. I'm like, I don't know all of them. I know a lot of them are customers, and I don't mind being Facebook friends with my customers, especially good customers that I see names on and interact and blah, blah, blah. But that is kind of, to sum up my motivation, and it's changed. My social media thing has changed, because in the beginning I was like, yeah, I don't want more than 200 people, and now I just don't want 5,000. You know what I mean? Like my goal is somewhere between 5,000, 200 and 5,000, somewhere in there. And so I don't send out a lot of friend requests. I don't look for people. If I see somebody that I'm like, oh, I know them and I have a connection, I'll send a friend request. For the most part, I let people friend request me, because I try not to um, social media for me is too distracting. Like, personally, I can kill too much time on social media, and not a good way. Just scrolling or whatever. And so, anyways, that's my kind of short view on it. It's just a down and dirty view. Um, and I think sometimes I struggle with, I don't want to say social media addiction, but if there is such a thing, probably, um, even though I don't post a lot and I don't engage a lot and I don't do a lot, I find myself scrolling, and I don't like that feeling. I really don't. Half of me wants to get rid of. I've thought about deleting Facebook. I've thought about deleting Instagram off my phone. Um, and lastly, before I switch back over, I've I've essentially hired a couple gals, Kylie and Brittany, to help me with W social media, so that I'm not actively a part of that. Because for my health, I I had to separate it for W. You know what I mean? Like I was finding myself, man, it's getting hot in here. I feel like I'm gonna take my sweatshirt off, because I feel like I'm sitting in a counseling session right now with you guys. Hang tight. All right, I'm being really honest, but I feel like I've had to separate um, W social media from my personal social media, and the only way I could think to do that was to hire somebody. And so that my daily job wasn't on social media for W. I still hop in and I do things. You probably can tell when it's me versus when it's them. But um, anyway, so when this topic came up, I was kind of reluctant um, to discuss it, to be honest with you. More because I know myself, and I'm a pretty open book when it comes to certain things that I think about. And this is one of those ones that I feel like I should be in like an AA meeting. It's like, hi, I'm Buddy, and I've been addicted to social media before, or whatever. And so, anyways, let's start it off with that. Let's start it off with, like, self-policing ourselves on social media and the sport of hound hunting. So I'm doing it for a personal reason, but I do see, and I struggle, especially wearing the W hat, that I see posts and I'm like, holy cow, this is not good for the sport. You know what I mean? Whether it's um, and we can just start with content that's really not acceptable, and in my opinion, and I think both of your guys' opinions, should not be on social media. There's some posts that we just shouldn't do. We shouldn't be seeing. It's just ammunition for the antis. So when that happens, besides cussing at your screen, what do you think? And I'm going to start with Becky, because you started the conversation, but you want to talk about self policing. What do you think when I see my buddy James post some stupid picture or video that's not appropriate? What should I do to him?
I'm going to take it a little step back further, even. You're correct. It is 100% a cheap dopamine hit, and so is the engagement you get from putting a post on. And generally, the controversial posts are the ones that get the most engagement. I look at social media kind of like a loaded gun.
Yeah.
You can use it to shoot holes in the boat, or you can use it to keep the wolves at bay. No pun intended. Um, the way I feel about it is we have more knowledge than the general public. So if you would not be comfortable sending it to, and I'm not catering to the antis, do not mistake that. I am not. But I am aware that 90% of the population does not fall in the extremist or the hunter population. So the general population is who we're trying to educate and persuade. If you would not send that picture or that video to them with zero context, zero explanation, zero anything, it doesn't need to go on social media. And people can say, oh, well, I'm not hiding. Well, I'm not hiding either, or I don't care. I'm glad you don't, but I do. And I'm sorry, you have a responsibility to your fellow houndsmen because we're all in the same boat, whether you like each other or not, or whether there's jealousy problems, or whether there's hard feelings. What you do, unfortunately, affects me, and what I do, unfortunately, affects you.
I don't disagree with that, Becky. But when I sit back and I look at the problem, right? The small we got a good distribution of people who know this podcast, but I really suspect they are not the people. I mean, the people who are listening to this podcast are probably not doing it. Like they're probably not the problem, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest with you. Like, and that's um where I kind of get in this mode where we're preaching to the choir sometimes. It's like, man, we got to figure out how to connect with those people who are not engaging with the associations, not engaging on the podcast, not deeply connected to the sport. Because sometimes I see a post, I'm like, holy cow, I can't believe that guy posted that. You know what I mean? Like I would have expected better from a certain person or individual, and I'm like, he should know better or she should know better or whatever. But um, a lot of times it it's really just sharing, and it's like the masses getting that. I don't know if you said dopamine, that adrenaline hit of whatever they're getting out of the post, and that's what I don't know. That's the part that keeps me up awake at night. That makes me try to figure out how to fix this. Is like, yeah, we can preach to ourselves, but I don't know how to change the big equation.
They have to be willing to change too. And I mean, I've changed my mind over the years some too. I used to try to make my language a little more palatable. Oh, harvest. No, I didn't plant a seed. I killed it. But that's okay. We have to educate that
Yeah,
just because something might not be palatable to someone doesn't make it wrong. And that's the hard thing is
yeah,
it's not changing us, it's changing the other perspective. And if there's posts that come up that are reportable, that are 100% shooting holes in the boat, they're getting reported. I actually saw a post the other day and someone said, someone reported my post. It was not me. And they said, yeah, it was probably another houndsman that did it. Well, that probably tells you that it needed to not be on social media. So there's only so much you can do if you can't control both
yeah,
sides. And like you said, majority, we are kind of preaching to the choir. And this is not by any means an attack on people that are doing it. It's just we've got to hold ourselves accountable as a group. If you see dogs that are not being taken care of well, if you see game that's not being treated correctly, if you any of that, it just if we don't do it, the rest of the world is going to.
yeah. I look at it, and I know that James talking a minute here, but I there are times where I'm like, man, sometimes I wish that a quicker and harsher example. It's kind of like a kid, you know what I mean? Like, um, I had Bradley when he was a little kid here, and we had a fireplace, a little pellet stove fireplace, and he was walking around stumbling, and he went and touched the mantle right before the fireplace. It wasn't hot, it wasn't even on, but I flipped out. I was like, oh look, and I ran up there, and I was like, ow, ow, and I made a big scene like I got burnt, and I kind of threw the coffee table, not in a bad way, enough to scare him. I really scared him. I made a big point. Um, when he was young, that I was like, you don't touch that wood stove. You know what I mean? And boy, that boy never got even close to that wood stove the rest of it. I mean, he was probably a year and a half. I mean, he was crying. I mean, it was a big deal to him, but I knew that I had that opportunity to make a really quick, sharp point one time. Like, let's just make a point and teach this kid a lesson early on. And sometimes I kind of wish that point could be made for some hound guys. Not that I want them going to jail or anything, but I'm like, I want such a quick, sharp reaction to some of these guys, because it's like, well, I'll bring up like the coyote. You know what I mean? Like either killing if the dogs catch or stretch an animal, like that's a an action that happens, and people are getting tried for animal abuse in that action. Now, whether I'm not going to say whether it's right or wrong, I'm not taking that stance. I'm just saying I've had customers call me and going, "This is what's happening," and and he's got this legal, and he's got to get a lawyer, and if that's what you want to stand on, and that's the fight you want to go against, that it's legally you're allowed to do what you want to do, that's fine. But it's going to cost you thousands of dollars, and you're probably going to change your mind by the time you go through court and try to defend that or fight that situation. And it all stems from social media. Like the whole idea comes from, well, the one I'm thinking of didn't, but because it happened in front of a bystander or whatever. But that's the part where I'm like, sometimes I wish there was just a sharper, quicker reaction to at least give some consequence. You know what I mean? Because right now the only consequence they get is a positive reinforcement from a lot of people on Facebook, and there's no legal consequence. And so people are being rewarded, but there's no actual consequence until the point where you're sitting in court and you're trying to explain all this in court, and then the harsh reality of some of this stuff comes together. So that's the hard part that I've often thought about is, reporting somebody or whatever. I'm not necessarily saying that's what we got to do, but I wish there was better examples for people, to show, hey, Joe and Joe got accused. He this is what happened with him. He got animal abuse charges. This is what happened. Here's what happened. Da, 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 da. So, like, we don't need to be promoting or supporting that. We need to be trying to stop that from happening. So, anyways, James, I'm gonna let you take it. We talk a little bit.
Yeah, and I think another problem we have with that is, like you say, there's not really a consequence, and it's been, I guess, in my experience, that when you do reach out to somebody and tell them, hey, this shouldn't be online, or you report that post or whatever, 9 times out of 10, the reaction you get back is, them arguing why it should be there and why it shouldn't matter and how they don't care about what the antis think and blah blah blah. It's
Yeah,
very rarely do you get a guy that's like, oh yeah, you're right. um I know that it's been about a year ago now. I won't mention any names, but there was a video on Instagram that and it was from a very well known person that is a he makes short films. He's a videographer. um and he'd posted a video of his dogs baying up some lion kittens, and they never did grab a hold of the kittens. They never, nothing was killed, whatever. But just the video itself, um, in the wrong hands, that could look really bad.
yeah,
And so I reached out to him and I'm like, hey man, um, I don't think that this should be, online, and uh, kind of more or less like I expected more out of you. And he instantly shot back and was argumentative, and so then I got argumentative and I was a dick right back to him, and it kind of went back and forth. And about 2 days later, um, he reached out to me and apologized, and he's like, you're right. um, this could have negative consequences. It wasn't something that I really thought about in the beginning, and I was just proud of my dogs and yada yada yada. But 9 times out of 10, the knee jerk reaction you're going to get from somebody is they're going to basically just tell you, why they think that it's fine.
yeah, and that's human nature. I think that's the hard part. Is it's not such a simple. tasks that were, and that's why I kind of started this on the ego thing, is because we're dealing with an innate human part of it. You know what I mean? Like there's a human, there's an emotion that's attached to it, and people are feeding off of that emotion, whether it's getting shares, getting likes, even getting, you know, negative feedback. You know what I mean? Any type of feedback. I'm not saying that, oh, just a bunch of negative feedback is going to do it. Some guys may just double down and want to show themselves right even more than that. But I remember that post, and he was so proud that his dogs were trained to stay back. So in that situation, and just to defend him a little bit, he was showing that he could capture that thing without killing a bunch of kittens. And so he was trying to show the power of his dogs, or I won't say the power of his dogs, but the ability that his dogs, and some guys have been like, oh, that's, dogs can't do that or whatever. And so he was really happy that they weren't hurting the animal. And I would like that in my dogs too, to be honest with you. I would, I like to decide if an animal gets harvested or not. I don't want my dogs, not to say that they I'm not preaching one way or the other, but I'm just saying, if I had a choice, I want my dogs to do that. I want them to sit back and bay and not touch an animal. I want them to hold the animal for me. Let me decide if it's harvestable or not. And kitten, small kitten, whatever, it doesn't matter. I don't want my dogs killing the animal themselves. That's just my line of thinking. And I want to be the one that dispatches any animal when I'm hunting. Um, and that's my ultimate goal. So if I switch back to that guy, and I don't remember who he is, so I'm not, whatever, but I think that was what he was at first, was like proud about, the fact that he wasn't hurting them. They weren't killing a bunch of kittens. But on the flip side, like what you're saying is, that doesn't matter. You show that video on national TV when you're running a ballot initiative in Colorado or something, and everybody else looks at that video that's not a houndsman and not a hunter, and they come away with a whole different take on that, of uh, what their opinion of that video is. And it's like, yeah, we see the world from a whole different lens than somebody who isn't a houndsman.
Yeah, 100%.
You have to look at it and see, okay, if this was taken or interpreted the worst way possible, how would it look? And we need to be careful now too, because what's your average reel on Facebook or Instagram? 5 seconds, 10. So you might post a video that if someone watched the full 30 seconds, they might get the whole, not intent. Anyways, but that, you get, say it goes a little viral and then a
Context.
page, yes, exactly. A page picks it up and then they crop it at a certain point. It just, and like you said, social media's got some great things. You can post, hey, I lost a dog, I found a dog. It's just, there's just a responsibility that comes with it.
Yeah.
And like you guys said, I'm sure that, and I didn't see that post, but I know the type of post you're talking about, and I'm sure that guy did and was like, hey, this is, a really good thing in our perspective, which it is. It's just not everybody takes it from our perspective.
Yeah. 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 It's the influencer world. You know what I mean? There's people who want to gain influence and want the accolades. And I think a lot of times those highly, and I try to explain to people when they're at a tree for the first time with a bunch of dogs, it's like there's a ton of energy at that tree, or a bay up or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, um, to us, and some houndsmen thrive on that. And I'd say most houndsmen thrive on the um, adrenaline as the situation, right? And so I think some of the problem is that adrenaline elicits that emotional response. And so the videos that, number one, uh, are detrimental to hounds have a lot of adrenaline, they have a lot of emotion, they have a lot of connection to people, and they feel that moment, but they're not in that moment. You know what I mean? So to a hound guy that looks at a really tight bay up, we relate to that, right? So we look at that. Let's just say a really big bay up situation where you're going in and we're watching a video with some guy's dogs and they're really tight bayed up, and you're like, oh shoot, because we can feel that emotion and that adrenaline, because we've been in situations similar. We may not have been in that situation, but we've been in situations similar to that. And that's human nature, right? So when me and James are talking offline or whatever, and we're telling a story, we're like, man, you won't believe the shit that happened on this story. We do that over a phone call. And we've done that for, not me and James, but humans have done that for hundreds and hundreds of years, tell stories about probably dumb shit that they've done. I mean, 100 years ago, they're like, this is dumb shit that happened in my cave, my cave when I was a caveman back in the day or whatever. So I think that that's normal. But now with social media, it's a whole different perception of story. You're basically telling a story, and people are connecting with that story. And people that have hounds and have dogs, we look at that and we can relate to it. And so we share, we engage. The flip side of that is people who don't have dogs, they find that scary. They find the adrenaline overwhelming. They've never been around that many dogs. They look at it as if they are the one being pursued or whatever. And so it elicits a negative response from other people. So it's like, yeah, in our small knit of the community, you get a lot of positive, like, oh wow, that was a hell of a story, and you were the cowboy that went in there and saved the day, and your dogs did great. But to somebody who doesn't have that connection, they don't know dogs. All they know is their couch pet, and they imagine that that's their dog being bait up, or they are the ones in trouble or whatever. And so they walk away with a whole different response. And I don't know how you fix that because it's just a widespread problem that is, I think it's bigger than anything we have done. We've always been person to person. So I tell James a story because I trust James. James tells another hunter story. We never did that in the dining area, you know what I mean, in the common area of a diner, you know what I mean? You didn't tell these stories with a bunch of onlookers listening to your stories. You told them around a campfire at hunting camp, you know what I mean? Or where you told the story had a limited audience, and now we're telling these stories out in the public square.
And I think people could take that as saying, oh, well, they're doing things that need to be hidden. No, that's not what it is. The general public is so far removed from any type of prey, predator, animal. Most people can't get their dog to stop crapping behind the couch when it rains. They don't understand the concept of having dogs that well trained to be in control of scenarios like that. And they're so far removed in just 2 generations from a farm, from any type of involvement with
Yeah.
animals, that they can't even understand that concept of that being okay. And that it's not, there's studies, and we can all cherry pick studies, that support a certain side, but there's studies showing the hormonal stress effect or lack thereof to certain situations. People are just so far removed from reality anymore that I think it makes it kind of a double whammy when they do see it.
Yeah. So James, besides being an a-hole and calling out a guy, which, again, thank you. I think more of us need to do that. Not be an a-hole. Everybody should be nicer about it. But what do you think as far as what can you think of something that a hound guy or and this goes for everybody that's listening, you know what I mean? Like, if we can kind of sit back and think about what it is that we can do to curb this problem. I don't know that we can. Like, I really don't know that we can. And I think it's a negative trajectory for the outlook of hunting. I really do. If we don't fix this, we're only going to get worse. I mean, things are only going to get worse. Colorado, if you don't think it's going to happen in your state, you may be 10 years, 15 years away, but at some point it's going to happen to you. And we have to figure out a way to stop it. So do you have any ideas on tips of somebody that maybe not they're the problem, but when they see a post that can be negative.
I definitely agree with what you're saying there as far as it, I think if it's something that we don't get a handle on, um, hound hunting is going to be a thing of the past.
Yeah.
You're eventually going to lose it everywhere. Um, it's one of those deals that is going to be on the shopping block in some state somewhere, in some fashion, I think from here on out. And, aside from calling a guy out, I don't really know, I guess, what else you do. Just because, houndsmen in general, I would say, are a different breed of people. And so I think that, the definitely not always the most, I guess I don't know how to exactly put that, but
They're pretty hard headed. I mean,
I,
like
yeah, I think,
we don't live by society's norms. You know what I mean? Like
yeah. And so I think that really calling a guy out and going about it, just straightforward and not beating around the bush is really the only way you're going to get through to most people.
Yeah, maybe.
And like I said, maybe not, maybe it goes the exact opposite way.
Yeah.
And turns them into, wanting to post more stuff that they shouldn't.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's a real easy answer for that.
No.
I don't think anybody really wants to be that guy either. No one wants to be the fun police, but you might have to be like, hey, there's some people that you probably need to be a little bit of a sledgehammer with. And there's some people that probably like, hey, just think of it from this way. This probably isn't a great look. If anybody feels attacked, they're instantly going to be defensive right off the bat. And kudos to the guy that you had talked to, James, coming back 2 days later and saying that, because a lot of people wouldn't. That's pretty mentally mature, and how do you get through to people to get the most effect while doing least amount of damage that you can, and not having a superiority complex or coming off that way while you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at some level I was kind of doing a little bit of research and or, I don't say research, but reading a little bit. One of the things that I thought about was a term called the vocal minority. You know what I mean? And that's a big thing sometimes. And that I think sometimes people see that minority, that vocal minority. And when I say that, I mean the people who are given accolades to a rough video or something. They're like, oh wow, you know what I mean? Like for every post that there there's a lot of people who are like, they don't say nothing. They just scroll on by like, gosh dang it, you know what I mean? And sometimes that's a real thing. Like especially with W, sometimes I'll look at it and go, I'll get some, 3 or 4 negative comments or whatever it is, you know what I mean? But behind the scenes, you'll see a ton of positive comments. And so a lot of times those guys will see those comments that maybe somebody's reinforcing or sharing a video that most of us aren't. And then, but they don't see the hundreds of people who look at that and go, they shake their head like, oh, I can't believe he put that up there. I can't, you know what I mean? Like the behind the scenes talk. And I don't know I don't know how you fix that, but I think that's a real thing where some of these people, they're rewarded by a minority of people who are like, oh, that video was badass. I can't believe that. And this and that. And some, a few people that look at that and go, man, and they reward them, but they don't realize that for that one kid that said that's a badass video, shit, there's 50 that are like shaking their head and just scrolling on by, you know what I mean? And just almost irritated that that's there. And they don't even have a clue. And so that was one of the topics when I was doing some reading. I was like, man, that was kind of a real thing that people have to realize sometimes is what's on social media is not always the truth. You know what I mean? Like the interactions you see, and I see that for myself too. Like there'll be times where um, I look at either I'm doing competition, studying competition, or I'm studying something with W, or I'm trying to figure out what did well, what didn't do well. Not always does the social media engagement portray a good presentation of what really happened in real life. Sometimes the other way around. Sometimes they'll be like, man, we get a lot of shares, but we don't sell a single damn thing. You know what I mean? Like we get some product that we think is like cool, and we get a lot of engagement on social media, but I'm like, dude, we didn't move the needle off of social media. You know what I mean? People, this was something really cool on social media, but it wasn't really cool in real life, or vice versa. Sometimes something does really good in real life, but boy, people won't share that for nothing. You know what I mean? Whatever it is. And so I think sometimes people have to look at a understanding of, okay, what happens on social media doesn't always mean what the majority of people are thinking, and that minority, I mean, that's a real thing. So
Yeah, and I think that um, something else that I've noticed is, and I guess not to single anybody out, but a lot of times you get a lot of these posts from places where they've never had to you know risk losing hound rights, or they've their states never even considered losing
yeah,
hound rights, um, and they've never seen something like Washington State, for example, like you know going into those commission meetings and dealing with what we dealt with, just trying to get the hound training program up and running. If you've never been exposed to that and seen what the antis will do, and there's no limit to what they'll do, um,
yeah,
it's like it doesn't hit home. And and I think also along with that, um, there's probably, and I guess you would know better than me as far as just how many customers you have, but there's probably more hound hunters right now, or people with hounds, um, than there has been in the recent past. Just I think it's something it's easier to get into now. Uh, you can buy a GPS collar and know right where your dogs are, and there's people willing to sell finished hounds, and it's definitely a lot easier to get into than it was 40 years ago, 30 years ago.
yeah. And the technology, everybody's got a camera. I mean, there's a ton of. So I don't even know that there's more, but I think there's more exposure to it for sure. I think social media exposure to it is, um,
Yeah, and so I think you get people that maybe haven't been doing this that long and haven't been around it their whole life, and they don't know necessarily any better, or they don't know this might look poor for everyone else to see. They just they're proud of their dogs, and maybe it's the first lion they've ever shot, or maybe it's the first bear they've ever bait up on the ground, whatever it may be. um, they don't know enough about the negative impacts of things because they just haven't been around that long.
yeah, I'd agree.
And so stuff like that, I don't really know if there's definitely no easy answer as far as how to stop that. I think a lot of this you just have to live and learn.
Yeah, and I think if you have a young guy and a mentor on that level, um, as the older, more seasoned hound guy or whatever, I mean, sometimes we've got to um, tell those kids. I don't say kids, but I mean that an endearing term. But um, I think that's important that some of these guys, especially the ones who are looking for mentors, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, the hard part is if you got kids that are not, and I say, I use the word kids. I don't use that word, but young guys, the guys just getting into it who are, they're struggling. You know what I mean? It takes a little bit to get this game going and to be successful in this game. And so when they start to see a little bit of success, again, that word ego is going to come up for me, but I don't mean it in a bad way. I just mean that it fills their ego cup a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like, oh wow, you finally caught one. You finally had some success, and that's really good. I mean, that's really that's part of the process. You know, if you don't have that, you're not gonna deem success. If you can't put a little bit of juice in the ego cup, it's gonna get you the next time, and that's how you're gonna learn. So I'm not saying that, but um, what I am saying is those guys, those young guys, when they do something like that, especially if you have a connection with them, if hearing it from you means something to them, if they're asking you from advice and stuff like that, that's probably, and I should probably do a little better job of this. Normally I keep my mouth shut. I'm sure a ton of guys are just like me, that we don't want to criticize people. We're like, man, we've all been there. We all remember what it's like to be young and dumb and whatever. But um, maybe we got to be a little more vocal and be like, hey, man, don't put that up there. Just don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, hey, that's going to bite us in the ass if you keep doing that. And so sometimes hearing it from somebody that I can tell you from personal experience, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to. I got a young guy asking me, for advice on dogs and da 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 da. And I look at his Facebook and I'm like, dude, you don't need advice on your dogs. You need advice on Facebook. Stop putting that shit on Facebook. That's what I really need to tell him. And a lot of times I bite my tongue and I don't say anything because I don't want to. I don't want to cause drama. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to be that person, but maybe that's what this podcast should really be, is look for those connections with people who trust you. So if you see somebody doing something and you have some trust established with that person, they're going to take that message from you a lot better than they're going to take that message from me or James or Becky, who they have no trust with. You know what I mean? They're just going to think that we're just bitching about it. Like, oh yeah, you're just bitching about it. You're just jealous. That's a big one. No, you're just jealous. No, not just jealous. I don't really care. We've seen those things. Everybody's seen those things. I'll say everybody, but a lot of people have seen those situations. We've just gotten over that. You know what I mean? Like in 40 years, I say 40, 30 years, if you haven't seen some dicey situations in anything, elk hunting, I'm sure your mule or horses, Becky,
Mules mostly, but we do have an old
just a
gelding.
delay. Mules,
But
right?
yeah,
And so
there's
if you've been around mules and horses that long, you got train wrecks. You know what I mean? Like shit that happens and stories that happen that you get to tell. You know what I mean?
oh yeah.
And so it's like everybody that's been around it has some of those. I know James does because I get to hear about him all the time. Me and James are on a texting basis. So, but those are the things that you tell your buddies, you tell people you got good deep connections with, you got trust with, and you laugh about it. And 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 so if that's the takeaway that I could come up with, is when you see something and you have a deep connection with that person, and when I say deep, I don't mean like you know your best friends, but I mean you have some type of trusting relationship, whether you trade dogs with them, whether they've asked you for advice or whatever. If you could just maybe step out of your comfort zone a little bit and be like, hey man, I don't want to burst your bubble, but I don't know that that's wise to do. And um, I, legally, you're opening yourself up for trouble. You know what I mean? Like whether it's um, you just don't want that. Number one, to be used against us for sport, and number two, you don't want to have to defend that shit in court. You know what I mean? Like there's some things that's like, hey, that that probably shouldn't have happened, and you probably shouldn't have that on public or whatever. And um, what's the ultimate motivation for? And that's the part that gets rough, is whenever you think about, when I think about it, is like, what am I really posting that for? You know what I mean? If I got a really cool video or whatever, a lot of times it's because I want to share it with my friends. But Facebook is more than friends. So,
Yeah, and that's a good point that you guys had too.
all right.
It's not always out of spite or ignorance. It's oftentimes out of passion that's maybe just a little misguided and needs a little bit of direction.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Anyway, so that kind of, I think we can wrap it up here. I want to get out on time. I've told, like, if I ever say I'm going to get out early, then everything blows up. We end up working on time. So whenever James was like, "How about 3?" and then you were like, "How about 3? Doing a podcast?" And I'm like, "No, I want to leave early." I can't say that out loud because every time I say that, we get snookered in, and the shop gets mad at me because they're like, "Buddy, you jinxed us." Every time you say we don't leave early, we never get out of here early. But I think this is a good. Hopefully, I mean, it's not going to be the best podcast. I don't think best whatever, but I think there's some podcasts we got to do. That's, hey, some we get to talk about dogs, some we get to talk about fun stuff and stories, and others we need to be a little bit more serious on the sport and longevity of it. And this is one of those. And I would encourage people message, discuss, you know, let's share ideas. This is a big problem, and I'm not saying we got the solution here. I'm not saying that, like, hey, this is as easy as X, Y, Z, but I am saying that if we don't figure it out in the next 15 years, we're going to have problems. Like, this isn't, we're going to have problems. We might have problems next year. Colorado's right there. Um, Jury's out on that one. I know uh, there's a lot of moving pieces, and we're tracking that one really closely. Nevada had a thing, right? New Mexico, Utah. There's little things firing off all around right now. Like there's, um, I the political landscape right now is absolutely astronomical for me to try to comprehend. I had to stop reading because the Trump deal and the Biden deal, and I'm not even talking about hounds. I'm just talking about the political climate that we're in right now is so polarized. It's so divisive. It's like a tinderbox right now, and we just can't afford to have our stuff get hung up in that. So whether you agree with it or not, like there's so much happening on the big scale of things. Screw hound hunting. Like that's such a small item that is not even on the major radar for people right now, as far as in the big political schemes. We don't need this to be flying under the radar and turn into a political fight, because we won't have the political capital to do it with the Trump and the Biden and all that. I mean, there's so much. It's going to be so hard to get people to talk about this. Wolves. We got wolves. We got grizzly bear in their reintroductions. I mean, there's just so many things that are going on. Why do we need more fights? That's my biggest worry is right now is this is going to be hard to get political capital to focus on this if we aren't careful. And so that would be my plea is, man, we don't need people looking at hounds right now. We got wolves and grizzlies and all sorts of shit. And then we got this Trump and all the lawsuits. I mean, I can't even follow all this stuff. It blows my mind right now. So that's my biggest thing. Becky, before we go, you did I want to give you accolades. I watched was a trailer for that. I was doing a podcast with Naomi. Um, they were talking about, what was that video you did? I can't think of what it is right now.
Oh, the Blood Origins Lionheart documentary.
Yeah, Lionheart. Yeah, that was really good. The part I see, I haven't watched it the whole thing, but we need more of that. To be honest with you, it had a really good message. You know what I mean? It was a really discussion and a deep dive into the hounds, and showed it, and using a cute girl with puppies is exactly what we need more of. You know what I mean? Because that shows uh, a side of hounds that a lot of people don't see. You know what I mean? So I just want to give you accolades. I know it wasn't you doing it, but you were a part of that, and I seen that, and I had actually thought about that. Like, I won't say it was my idea, but they probably stole my idea. But I had thought about like trying to do something like that, like a video that
Yeah.
showed, the puppies and the softer side of the hounds.
And that's 90% of it. That's what majority of it is, even as much as we hunt, that's still a very small portion of the time spent with these dogs. And, I think I really had some reservations about doing it at first because it does open you up to some scrutiny from outside eyes. And
Oh yeah, that Becky Dwyer just was taking care of them puppies, and boy, she ain't a real hound girl. She's got the puppies on the couch.
oh yeah, I think it'll come out pretty well, and I think it's going to come out in perfect timing. I was just we're really glad to be able to be a part of that, and hopefully it does some good, and we can all support each other
Yeah,
and keep up the good fight.
and in my personal opinion, I think we need a little more of that sometimes. I think about like couch dogs and stuff. And my dogs. Luckily, I got them off the couch now, but um, they are inside. I mostly because I don't have kennels built for them, and I've just lost some battles at home for dogs. But um, I was thinking about that, and some of that we have to be a little more open to the softer side of these hounds having some publicity. You know what I mean? I know in the old days it was like, well, that you know, you got this hard ass line, and we look at this hard line of a guy and his hounds, and they sleep outside and they do this and that and this, and I think some of that's changing, and we need to defend kennels. You know, uh, as far as there's antis coming after certain things, tethering, kennels, all those types of things. We need to defend those. I'm not saying that everybody should have house dogs. By no means. Like, I don't recommend it. It's a pain in the ass. I'm wearing a hat that got chewed up by my puppy, so I'm already kind of mad today. I'm normally not on the camera, so I don't notice my hat, but being on camera, I'm looking at my hat right now, going, God damn it, I gotta change that hat. I don't look at myself enough. But um, I think sometimes that Lionheart video showing you with the softer side of the puppies, I think we need to be more receptive to displaying some of the softer side of our hounds and using social media as a tool, for that, and supporting that to be like, hey, we know how the antis are going to use social media posts against us. You know what I mean? And we got plenty of hound guys that are giving them ammo. Like, unfortunately, and I don't know that we're going to be able to stop that. Maybe we can. I don't think so, but hopefully we can. But we should look at a counterproductive way, another method of going, hey, let's show these puppies a little bit more. Let's show these kids with the puppies, because that's telling a story too. You know what I mean? And that's telling a positive story with us, to be like, hey, these are our puppies, and these are our kids and our puppies, and everybody sees these hounds bait up fully, in these intense situations. Well, those hounds would be just as happy curled up next to a kid too. You know what I mean? In most situations, you know what I mean? Like, some of those hounds that look so mean and aggressive when they're doing their job are just about the coolest thing. And that was the one thing that I really appreciate on your video, that whoever they did a really good job of you relating to that, and you sitting with, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but you sitting with them at their kennels or whatever, and when they were not hunting, and they were just being a regular dog, you know what I mean? And so, anyways, that part of it I think we need more of, and hopefully that video gets out. um, I'm excited to watch it when it comes out. James, have you seen the preview for that?
Yeah, I have. I'm really looking forward to being able to watch the whole thing, though.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, I think it's come out really well.
how did you get tied into that?
So I had actually contacted Robbie, gosh, it would have been years ago, when we were kind of dealing with some political stuff here and saying, hey, if you ever wanted to do anything with hounds and kind of a little grassroots fighting for everything we can, let me know. And this was probably, gosh, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. Um, and we were friends on Facebook, just kind of kept in touch a little bit that way. And then they approached us, and I had some reservations. Cleve says I'm a nut job, but I'm pretty protective over my dogs and who comes in and who I just like to keep things how I like them. And so it was definitely, we had to talk about it for a little bit and be like, all right, what could come from this? But I think it'll be worth it. Like you said, I think if we can just keep, I feel like it's hard too, because you have a lot of guys who are masculine guys. And sometimes that can maybe feel a little emasculating showing that side. But I think if we can, for every 2 bad posts out there, if we can put some other, 5 or 6 good ones, we can gain some traction. And like you said, first and foremost, they are dogs. They have that whole other side of life
Yeah.
where, they're playing and roughhousing or cuddling up with each other. We just, we need to show the other side of it as well. And I think that does it really well. I'm not entirely sure when the whole video is going to come out. I know they're going to try and put it to some pretty big film festivals. So that could be interesting. But the feedback they got at the Colorado Trappers event was really good.
Yeah. Yeah. It seemed like it was good. I don't like going out to these different, I don't like social events. So I'm like, man, I just want to just watch it at my house. But maybe I'll get to watch it at some hound event. I can go travel to, like I said, if I'd have known, I would have head out to Colorado just to watch the video. I was telling Jason that I may need to try to hit up an event in Colorado or whatever. We're trying to look at our different schedule for events and stuff. And my goal is to hit different hound events there. So hopefully one of these hound events they'll play that video. Maybe, I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing it. It looked like it was well produced. It has a lot of the ideas that I've, like I said, I'm just gonna take credit. Somehow they stole my idea. You maybe gave it to them. I don't know. So
Yep.
somewhere, but I had that idea. I just couldn't get a guy to video it. You know what I mean? And I didn't want it to be about me. And I personally wanted the W brand involved in it. Just because that's my motivation. To be honest with people, but the bigger motivation was to show that these are dogs to us. You know what I mean? They're dogs to us. They're not tools, and they have a purpose, and it's really cool to watch what these dogs do when they turn on and they go to work. You know what I mean? Like for them, you jingle a collar in the house and they think that it's time to go hunt. They're like, oh, you know what I mean? But they're almost like bipolar. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
maybe that's not healthy for them. I don't know.
No, 100%. And I know they're also going to take it onto a theater tour. So I know they're going to do something like Western Idaho. So I think there'll be some pretty good opportunities to watch it before it's fully released for streaming. So, but yeah, I'm excited to see what it does.
Okay, cool. Yeah, excellent. Well, let's wrap this up. We went a little bit over. I was going to do 45 minutes. Becky, thank you for the last minute. I know you Facebook messaged me you weren't even trying to get work done. What do you do for work, real quick?
Head chief dog poop picker upper. But so usually what we do is in the summer we do a lot of contracting
Okay.
for the federal
So you just had to
agencies.
pick up poop, really. You just had to pick
Yeah,
up a lot of poop really quick to get ready for this podcast, then.
yeah, pretty
Okay.
much that, and
Well,
get dogs out and
if you're
put a
good
couple
at it,
bids in. But
right on.
yeah, thanks for having me on.
James, are you about ready to shut down for the vacation? You almost take your vacation off?
Yeah, I'm set to be out of here actually in about 20 minutes.
Right on.
And then probably be off till after the first of the year.
Heading back.
We got some more line. Yeah, I'll head back to Idaho. I don't think we have any clients coming in until after the new year, but if we get a little bit of weather, I'll head back over there and hunt for a few days and see if we can't get something lined up for when the next guy does show up.
Right on. Well, thank you. You too. Like, as far as I pretty much, it was a last minute deal. Like, called you a couple hours ago. Like, hey, I need to do a podcast, and no fault of your guys's. I've just been really chilling out, hunting too much, and hang out with family and shipping orders. But it's time. One of my goals is to try to get a few more podcasts done, and then I think as we're wrapping up this year, this might be coming out after, I don't know if it's first year or whatever, but I think we're going to be looking for bringing on another host or two, trying to get a little more content on the platform. I might even add some budget to make that happen so that we can get some good continuous content, because I've been lacking. I know Jason's doing better than me, but not like, I know for me personally, I've been having a hard time sitting down and doing a podcast. Becky, I don't know what's up with your internet, but it's really slow. There's a little bit of a lag here. Like that's the hard part. But I appreciate you showing up. And are you on Starlink, or what's your internet provider?
No, we've just got a little local one, and usually it's pretty good, but we've been having a lot of small storm systems rolling in. So it's been, and the wind kind of plays a part, and it
Mm-hmm.
seems to be pretty laggy today for whatever reason. Dogs probably chewed through the cable or something.
No worries. It's been good. It makes me slow down. Sometimes I talk. I mean, I talked way too much on this one already, I can tell, but as James can attest, sometimes having a lag makes me slow down a little bit. So you guys have a Merry Christmas. Thank you guys for last minute deal. And if we can come up with some other topics, let's do it again. And I want to hear whatever you hear that film tour. I forget what the name is already, but when that comes out, let's do a podcast on it and let's talk about it. Let those guys know if they need any help or anything we can do to help out. But I'm more than willing to help out on some project like that. They're doing a good job.
Yeah, you bet, for sure.
All right. See you guys later.
See ya.
All right. Bye.